Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero. Today's guest is very special to us. He is our dear friend Johnny Walker. Now, I don't pretend to love him as much as Pete does. They've been on a lot of combat missions together and gotten each other out of some jams, and that cements a brotherhood like nothing else, of course. But I do admire Johnny just as much as anyone. See, for as much as people talk about the American dream, Johnny's the dream American. He earned that tag the hard way. He's been on more Navy SEAL missions than most, if not any SEAL, because as a translator, he'd come back to base with one team and turn around and go right back out on patrol with another. In fact, we've been with Johnny among dozens of team guys and seen them call him and treat him like a brother. He's been a guest on the show several times, first way back on episode 10 with Duke Harbin, episode 118 with Scott McEwen, episode 215 was just him and Pete, and episode 266 with Mikey B. Today he brought his wife Beta, and she shares with us for the first time what it was like to hold the family together, to struggle to keep herself and the kids alive while Johnny was patrolling with the teams, and the harrowing journey out of Iraq, where no place was safe any longer. Last week, Johnny made it official and he became an American citizen. Pete went to his swearing-in ceremony and sat down with him afterward. Johnny, we love you, brother, and America is better because you and your family are here. So congratulations to you, and congratulations to all of us because you've chosen the United States as your new country. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the greatest Americans I know, Johnny Walker.
Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay
This
Moore.
is Greg Proops.
This is Jordan Harbinger.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This is
East.
Sebastian Younger.
This is Rick
This
Marotta.
is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
Hey, this is Skunk Baxter.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
I'm Shelley Smith, and I'm here on the Break It Down Show.
And now, the Break It Down Show with John Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
Yeah, so we're sitting here. First off, Shelley's a wonderful hostess. She bought sandwiches, and Phil is co-hosting today. I was hungry. We actually interviewed Hilliard guests earlier today, and so we came down here, and we actually didn't get to get lunch, so we've been on the go, and it's awesome. And you've got a wonderful view.
Thank you. That's why I moved here, because I love the view.
You went to Mexico. You fell down. In real life, when you were doing your job, because you're on the go a lot, ESPN says go here, go there. Okay, I fell off a bus in Kuwait.
Okay, no, you win. That's
Right?
much worse.
But I'm just in Kuwait getting off a bus to fly to Iraq. I haven't even done anything. I just have all my gear on my back.
Right.
I walk off the bus, and like the back door in the bus, there's often like a little cutout to the bathroom door. Well, it's totally blacked out. And I stepped where the step wasn't.
Oh.
And so I went all the way down and just wrecked my whole leg. But I didn't break anything.
Yeah, I don't think I did, but who knows?
Well, the thing is I still got to go out on patrols and everything else. So in your profession, you've still got to show up.
I just play hurt. I'm tougher. I'm tougher than I look. And 2 days ago I couldn't raise my arm at all, but now I can. So I'm getting better.
Right. So when you're doing your job day-to-day basis and you're out like covering Super Bowl or whatever it's going to be, does that you just put your arm in your pocket and just keep on trucking and talking to folks?
Yeah. Well, I had my knee replaced a year ago March.
Okay.
And the Warriors told me I could do a sit-down interview with one of their players, but I had to do it in this certain time frame. So I had to, 2 days after my knee replacement, I went up to Golden State and crutched my way across the court to go interview Zaza Pachulia.
Right.
And I did it. You just do it. You do it because if you don't do it, someone else will.
Right.
So I took my daughter with me, and we had a knee, the CPM machine in there and the whole thing. And I made it. I made it through it. It wasn't fun, but
yeah,
you can get through anything if you try hard enough.
Yeah.
And the magic of TV.
Yes.
You can hide a lot of things.
Yes.
Like I just went and watched Jeopardy 2 weeks ago, and it's amazing. Like you watch Jeopardy, and you go, Alex Trebek looks extremely healthy, and
he's not, right?
And he almost fell down probably 5 times just walking back and forth, and he's very unstable. But the magic of TV, it's like they hide that very well, and they only show you clips of where he's already walked somewhere, and he's doesn't look unstable, but man. And then a couple of days later, it came out that he has stage 4 pancreatic cancer.
I know, it's awful.
And I was like, Okay, makes sense because he did not look good.
They don't care if I look good or not. They just air it. They won't clean it up, so if I'm limping across the field. And actually, when Jake Olsen snapped, I hadn't had the replacement yet, and I couldn't walk very well. But I was running down that sideline trying to get so I could see his snap in the game. So, it's, I say if you work hard enough, you can get through anything, but I know that's not true, especially with you, and we'll keep saying prayers that you get and you get the good drug and you don't get the placebo. But I do believe in faith and strength and getting through things, and that's just what I do.
And community. I mean, we do these things together. I can't bear much of a load for Phil. I would say that, but Phil's going to say, no, you help out in a lot of ways. So we all do even our little part. When you're looking for that story of community or whatever it is, sometimes you're just doing straight coverage of an event.
Sometimes it's a 20-hour day where you're not saying much of anything that means anything.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Except for that Phillip Rivers had a great practice, So then you're like, okay. But it's stories that I get to do that mean something that keep me going, like the Jake Olsen story. And we're going to be doing another one on him next week because he's raising money for retinoblastoma and a cure that they seem to have come upon. So
wow,
it's really amazing.
How often do those stories come along?
You'd think that they would come along a lot because society is just that way, but you don't always hear about them. Mm-hmm. And he's pretty much once in a lifetime story kid. I met him 10 years ago when he had a month of sight left.
Wow.
And it freaked me out so badly. I was driving. I had to pull over because I was like, oh my God, this 10-year-old kid or 12-year-old kid has a month of sight left, and I can't imagine that. And he handled it with such grace, and he still handles it with such grace. And I just feel very lucky to have been in the right place at the right time to do that.
As a reporter or as a journalist, and you're coming across stories like that, I know that his is a once in a lifetime, but there's other stories that you cover or come across where they grab your heart. How hard is it to move past those, or do you just does that story keep with you? Because you've been with Jake for
10 years,
he was 10 or 12, and you're still covering him.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, and there was another story I did that wasn't as happy, and it was also nominated for an Emmy in the same category last spring. And Schuye LaRue, who was probably the best female basketball player ever to play, and something happened, and she ended up, however you catch it or whatever, she became schizophrenic.
Yeah.
And homeless, and we followed her for a couple of years. We found her in the park, and she at first was like she was living in the year 2000. She kept asking strange questions, but she was pleasant. And then the last time we saw her, she was just in a bad spot, and then she was arrested and put into a hospital. I went back and saw her a couple weeks ago. I didn't have to. I just did because I cared about her, and I didn't like the way that story made me feel. Mm. And that we couldn't do anything to help her. She doesn't want any help. She wants money all the time and for the next fix, but which of course we don't do. But there's nothing I could do to help her except for publicize her story and talk about schizophrenia and mental illness in athletes. We all think that athletes are immune,
right? And
they're not. And we're finding out more and more that there's a lot of mental illness in athletics.
Yeah, it is sad. And there's, gosh, this is a bigger topic, but I guess we can kind of dive into it. The way that we push our kids in athletics, but there's just no free time. Like when I grew up, I was a free range chicken of a kid, and I went out and did whatever I wanted, and that included dumb things. But I also didn't have this overwhelming schedule where I was driven and, I never got sick of baseball. My ability met my desire to do other things, and I went another direction. But it seems like the mental health problem that we're kind of giving our kids with all this pressure.
It's strange. My daughter played college soccer. She played at Oregon. Okay. And her schedule was so regimented that when she stopped playing soccer is when she started having problems because she didn't know what to do. There was no one telling her, you got to go to study hall, you got to go to tutoring, you got to do this, you got to go to practice. And so
Right.
it took some rewiring of her brain to get her back to where she was supposed to be. And I do not think that I understood that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I thought, well, she'll be fine. She's an athlete. You know, you get all those endorphins. And it's just not simply true. It's a lot more complicated than that. And I think we need to, you're right, pay more attention to our kids and what we have them do and talk to them.
Yeah, because they almost get to the point where we hear a lot about kids are on the path. They're on the path. They're going to go to USC, right? That's timely. And it's like, no, the kid's path can change. You can go to junior college. You can go to another college. You can not. You can do a zillion things. But they're so bound up in our expectations and then our belief in them. And it's just like it can become this kind of self-inflating prophecy where, you know, you have this kid and all of a sudden they're nowhere near college. And that's not even an option anymore because we've you know, let them get past the point of mental health. And now they're having a real problem.
Right.
Well, and then there's that pressure piece to it, but then there's also we're raising some from very young age. Some athletes, they kind of self-identify and separate themselves from everybody else, and from a very young age they become these elite personalities. And you know, in high school you're a personality, you get recruited by these colleges, and now you're, you know, big man or woman on campus. And then you graduate, and you may not make it at the next level. And then now you've always been the center of attention, and poof, all that's gone. All those people that were doing things for you are no longer there, and that's an issue as well. And I mean, I was not by any means a superstar athlete, but
What position did you play?
I have an interesting story.
Okay.
I don't want to get into it too much. I walked on as a kicker, so I've been a soccer player my whole life, and I have a super strong leg. And then, so I walked on as a kicker, can kick 63-yard field goals. But I was also 6'3", 225, can run a 4.5. And so they're like, what are you doing kicking?
Right.
We have kickers, but you're benching 350, you're doing all this other stuff. Why don't you come play D-line? We'll put 20 pounds on
Oh, my
you.
gosh.
And I'm like, no.
No, I don't want to do that.
I'm like, no, I mean, I got a small frame. I don't see myself being a 250-pound person. And so I got recruited to play free safety, so I ended up playing free safety and dropping the whole kicking game. Like, if we need you to kick, we know you can kick.
Right.
So I had fun playing free safety, even though I was not that – I never played free safety in my life, but I'm on a national championship D1 team, and so I was playing with people. So I played with Steve Entman and folks like that. So there were people that you could see, and I'm not saying Steve Entman was that way, but there are people that I played with that, wow, okay, that didn't make it, and the floor just fell out from under them. They had nothing else ready to go. And you just kind of spiral out of control, and it's just not
Who do you blame in that situation?
the system, because really it's to me, they're being propped up their whole life and not given the tools to deal with the real world. And it even goes beyond that. Some people do make it, and then after they're done with their professional career, 5 years out, their whole world collapses because they've been given everything their whole life, and now they actually have to go out and do something for themselves, and it's very difficult, and a lot of people aren't equipped to do that. I think today we recognize that a little better than in my day. So me being a Washington Husky, I'm a big fan of Coach Peterson, because Coach Peterson, he goes and recruits kids that he can build them up, and he finds people that he has a thing called OKG, our kind of guy, that he knows that he can – that are going to believe in his philosophies, but even beyond that, are going to graduate from the University of Washington, whether they play football or not. They're going to be contributors to society, and be well-rounded and well-equipped to deal with whatever comes their way. So I think the system is to blame, but there are programs out there that really address the situation and try to remedy that as much as possible by education and preparing those student athletes that have been pampered their whole life to, hey, you know what? A small percentage of you are going to make it, but the rest of you are not. So you need to be well equipped to handle the real world.
Right. Yeah.
What do you think is the answer to that?
I think parents is a big problem, and I think the system probably fosters that because parents, I don't know that I was as involved as I could have been when she was in college because, you kind of depend on the college to take care of your kid. And, and I do think parents have false ideas of what their child can become.
Sure.
We see that all the time. So I think better parenting, better working within the system, better, organizations like Coach Peterson's, that's the type of deal that you want your kid to go play in that kind of a system.
What if the kid's best shot is that big shot, though? What if even just being around football, and they're not even cut out to be in the NFL, but they're good enough to stand on the sideline and put a jacket on and make money?
Heck yeah. I mean, you're getting an education, you're getting
Right.
everything that comes along with it, including preferred class schedules,
Yeah.
tutoring.
Preferred acceptance into some
Right.
universities.
Even if if you want to fake being on the rowing team,
Yeah.
you can do that. I still don't understand that story, but
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of benefits to being on an athletic team, but you need to take advantage of them. I think that's really the case.
When a program like Alabama comes to mind, because they put a lot of players into the NFL, and they're always competitive, but they don't graduate a lot of players compared to like the schools that really focus on that. And I'm not saying that Coach Saban doesn't do a great job, but there is a sacrifice there at some time where we're going to make these players go through this system. We're going to have a highly competitive team, but graduation is not going to be the top result. Is that still viable? I mean, you can turn these players into something like they can go out in Alabama and get a job anywhere. I played on the team.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you always need to get your education. You always need to get your degree, no matter what you end up doing. And I just got done doing a story on Trent Richardson, whose family spent all his money, and he's now struggling a little bit, but he's playing in the AAF and doing pretty well as far as what I saw last weekend. But you need to have Plan B, and I don't think we tell kids enough that they need to have a Plan B. I didn't have a Plan B. I don't have a Plan B right now. So if I get fired from ESPN, I'm going to be in big trouble. I am teaching at USC, which I enjoy a lot. So that would be Plan B, but it doesn't pay any money. It pays like zero money.
When you're talking to these young people, they all want to know, how do I do it? How do I get to do what you did? First question is, are you satisfied with what you've done and what you're doing now?
I am. I'm passionate still.
Okay,
and
good.
I've been in this business for a long time, more than 20 years, and I still love going to work every single day. I'm passionate. I have a natural curiosity. I need to know why about everything. You saw me, grill you with questions when you sat down. But if you can find that in life, in any kind of endeavor where you have a passion to get up and go to work every day, then you've got life licked.
Yeah.
And I wish that for every kid.
We actually had that same lesson from Hilliard. He writes, and he's like, if you can't write, you read. If you can't read, you listen. If you can't listen, you watch. But those four things. If you're going to be a screenwriter, you have to work on those. Those are your elements. And then everything else is like, can you do it faster? Can you mix stories? But all that comes from those four building blocks. But every day, it's like I sit down 45 minutes, I work on this project, I turn that project off, the next one's going to come up, I'm going to go lift these weights for 10 minutes, get my heart going, I sit back down. But that's his program.
Right.
And nothing about what he said was like, it's easy.
It's not. It's not easy. And I took 4 months off this fall because my mom passed away and I had my hip replaced. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And getting back into it was really difficult. And I was surprised how much energy that I had expended in my job because I spent 4 months doing nothing. Really.
Right.
I went to physical therapy and read a lot of books and watched a lot of TV, but I didn't really work on anything that I usually work on, like making calls and trying to find stories and talking to people. And so I was exhausted. I would go to Chargers camp where it used to be no big deal, and I would come home and just throw myself into bed because I was so exhausted from, a 20-hour workday, which usually didn't bother me at all. I'm also getting older, so that doesn't help. But I'm back into it now. I feel good, and I feel except for the falls down the steps in Mexico. But other than that, everything else is really good. But
just for the record, there was no tequila involved in that
none,
fall down the
none.
steps.
There was no alcohol involved at all. It's my dad. I went with my 85-year-old dad. We lost my mom in August, and so we decided we needed to go and do something fun. And he just walked so slow, and I'm going to blame it on him because he was walking so slow, and I just tripped.
Yeah.
But I'm okay.
Not that you're anywhere near done, but how long do you want to be out on the sidelines? 20 hours?
Well, I'm kind of transitioning into bigger, longer features, which is sort of the way the industry is going.
Sure.
We don't have a lot of people in my position who've been there a long time going out and doing 20-hour days as much. So I'm doing a lot more E60, a lot more outside the lines, a lot more investigative type things, which sort of is good. It's a good time. It's a good time for me to be doing that.
Do you foresee some kind of, not expose because it's too late for that, but some kind of coverage of this USC and all these places that are dealing with, are we guilty of this too now?
Of what?
Of the whole like faking rowing and getting your kid in.
I don't know. I know we're working on it, and I know that I just don't know what else is out there. You know, it's so huge, and as we were talking before, it happens. It's been happening for a long time, and I remember doing a story about kids cheating on their ACTs to get into college. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
And we got someone who admitted it, and we got the guy who administered the tests, and so it's not that unusual to see people cheating trying to get someplace. But I just don't understand the privilege that these wealthy people believe they are entitled to. You know, if your kid can't get into USC, then have them go somewhere else. You know, it's just, I don't get that. I just don't understand why it's that important.
And I mean, even if you go to Fullerton, that's a local school for the family. That's a great school.
Yeah, of course. Go to Santa Monica Community College. You know, we don't take enough advantage of junior colleges.
Boy,
I would think, so.
No, I'm a big believer in that. Yeah, especially if you don't know what you want to do.
Right, because it's the same basic core classes that you'll take at any 4-year university, the first 2 years, and then you can specialize.
And whatever school it is, USC, UCLA, whatever school it is, they want that person that's like, oh, you know how to go to school already? You're going to get through the first 2 years? Oh, great. Come on. Graduation rates are way higher. So it is a better way.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, I understand, wanting to go rah-rah, the 4-year school experience. I went to Nebraska, so.
Oh, yeah.
But I also believe in practicality, and I think the system's changing. I think that no longer are we just sending kids to college for that general experience. They're going with a preconceived idea of what they want to do, which is good and bad. I mean, if you know what you want to do, why should this is the way I thought when I decided I wanted to be a journalist, was why do I need to go take biology? You know? Why do I have to take economics, which I wish now I would have.
Yeah.
But I think we're going into more of a specialized system, which I don't know if it's good or bad.
Yeah. When you're at Nebraska and you're taking the journalism classes, I've got a mass comm degree. I learned things, but I wouldn't say I didn't not learn, but what I took with me and what I had to learn were in no way similar, like actually how to do this job.
Right.
I learned how to edit a story together, and I learned the difference between hard news and soft news, and those things were obviously important, but to actually talk to someone, open them up, get them to talk, like that is a class you could teach, but it was never taught.
Right. Well, what also is not taught that I am now teaching is, what do you do? All right, where do you go to get your credential?
Yeah.
Where do you go to eat dinner?
Sure.
Where do you sit during the games? When can you ask questions, and what time? And so I took classes the last couple of weeks. I took them to a Clippers game. I took them to a Lakers game. We're going to a Dodgers game in a couple of weeks. And just those basic things. And I don't know how I learned them. I really don't. I think I just stumbled around and followed people and messed up a lot. But we don't teach the practical side of things. We can teach you how to ask questions and how to sit and look nice on TV. But what about the other stuff?
Yeah, I certainly learned how to hold a mic on TV.
Yeah.
They absolutely covered that. I remember that class.
All right.
But yeah, when do you insert yourself to do your job, and when do you sit back and go, it's not time yet?
Right. Right. So I think there's a lot of things that need to be changed in the education system, but
yeah,
one step at a time.
Sure, yeah. And also the expense of school.
Oh, gosh.
Like if you're going to get a journalism degree, I get that going to USC might help you get a job earlier, but it's like, how do you ever make that cost up? And unless you're a smash national level person who gets, a high, if you're going to go work in Butte, Montana, you're making 15 grand, 20 grand.
Yeah.
That's it.
I mean, there's kids who graduate from USC who are working in Butte, Montana right now. I'll tell you that. Yeah. It's hard. It's really hard to make it, and it's hard to.
This episode of the Break It Down Show is brought to you by Lions Rock Productions.
That's us.
We publish, evaluate, and develop podcasts just like this one, consult others to build their own, and create associated content and content marketing strategies.
So if you're launching or expanding your social media presence, your business or your personal brand, or if you just want to take your media presence to the next level,
reach out to us on Twitter
at Pete A. Turner
or at JohnLG69
at the Break It Down Show.
There's 1,000 ways to get a hold of us.
Now enjoy the show.
It's hard. It's really hard to make it, and it's hard to pay back student loans and pay back all kinds of things. I'm still paying my daughter's student loans, I mean, it's just not easy, and it's not easy to get a job. It's harder than ever to get a job, but there are a lot of jobs that are out there and available for people if you just work hard enough.
So now you see why there's so much pressure on these kids to be stellar athletes so they can get scholarships so their parents don't have to be burdened, or parents and students don't be burdened with these enormous student loans, right? So it kind of goes full circle where it's like, okay, why are we specializing? Because we need this kid to be a superstar so he can get a scholarship so that he can, pay for his own college.
Yeah.
Right? So I think it's systemic, this whole problem, and it's tough these days. I mean, I don't remember it being as tough when I was trying to go to school. Mm-hmm. And I'm to the point where my 17-year-old daughter, I'm like, maybe going to school isn't the right thing for you.
Right.
One, you don't know what you want to be or what you want to do. So whereas back when we were going to school, it's like, okay, you're going to school. I don't care what you want to be. You'll figure it out once you get there.
And somehow we did.
Right.
Somehow
some of us did.
We figured it out.
I mean, I graduated with a degree in oceanography.
Oh, okay then.
And
that was useful.
I'm by the ocean currently. I can see it from this window.
But you haven't graphied it at all professionally?
And I understand all of the dynamics that are generating this beautiful view and how this became to be.
Right.
Well, most of it's man-made, but at this point. But, yeah.
But, I mean, and then we tell you, leave school and go out and make millions of dollars and act like you're functional, and you're not functional because you don't even know how to balance a checking book. So millions of different issues that face young students today.
So you wanted to be a journalism student. You're studying that. But when did you really know, like, oh, no, I get this. I'm able to do this. I'm going to always do it.
That's a good question. I have no idea. I know that I went after it. I took a course. I started out as a photojournalism major, and then I had no patience, so I was never. I was just like, there's a scratch in that photo. Oh, who cares? Whatever. And so then I took a news writing class, and that's when I really fell in love with it. And I started covering everything for the school paper. I covered the courts. I covered the police beats. I covered everything, and that really was great training. And then I went to the AP and covered everything there, and that was great training too. And I think it was the day Reagan was shot, and I was on my way up to Omaha for a job interview with the AP, and they put me right to work. And I started making calls to little towns, people, and it was back in the phone book days, calling, Neely, Nebraska, and just cold calling people. What did you think the day, when Reagan was shot? And I put together a piece, and I think right then I thought, I can do this. I know I can do this, and I just went after it. And then I got a job in Tokyo because I was tired of living in Omaha. And I just started going after it there and interviewing athletes and players that would come over from the States to play in Japan. And I would travel for hours on trains to go see Jack Nicklaus and Arnold Palmer play golf, and McEnroe and Connors play tennis. And it was so much fun to be one of the few because they couldn't talk to anybody else. And And so I sat down and had a beer with all of them, and so it was a great experience to be with them. And so I just fell in love with it. Just absolutely loved the interaction with athletes and players and teams, and I don't know.
So as part of, you said you're getting more to the long form, do some research and then build the story. Do you get to pick what that subject matter is, or is there a discussion around we need to go after this, and then, or do you get to go find something that you're passionate about?
It's both. It's both. I just people come to me with stories, and then I go take them to headquarters in Connecticut, and then I have to get people to sign off on them, and that's harder than you might think.
Yeah.
But because I always think, it's a great story, and then they're like, no, we're not doing that. But it's both. So I pitch stories to Bristol, and they come to me and say, we want you to cover Jake's pro day. But I'd pitch that one as well. And sometimes you don't know. And you just learn that you just pitch everything because they need to know what you have if they're going to say yes or no. And one was Ndamukong Suh. And I always tell students that we spend too much time hiding behind emails and phones, and we don't get out and go to enough events. And I was at the Rams Eagles game, and I was down on the field, messing around and talking to people what I do. And I know Ndamukong because he went to Nebraska, and I know his family, and his family was there, and they also had a young girl there and her family. Turns out that Ndamukong sponsors a engineering student at Nebraska every 4 years. He has one student, and this girl had just graduated.
Oh, wow.
And he flew her and her parents out to L.A. to see this game, and they were on the field. And honestly, engineering students are nerdy kids. These were the nerdiest kids I'd ever seen in my life, and she was just darling. And I thought, well, that's nice. That's a nice thing. I didn't think ESPN would go to it because there's no edge to it. There's no, nobody's dying. Nobody lost a limb. Nobody, but they loved it. They said it showed a different side of him that we hadn't seen. And so we went and did it, and he loved it, of course. And the engineering department was thrilled because they had a watch party and the whole thing because they had never had an engineering student, I think, on ESPN on SportsCenter. So you never know what somebody may want and somebody may like and somebody doesn't like. So I just tend to send it all and see what sticks.
So was he an engineering student at Nebraska?
At Nebraska, he was.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I would never have guessed that was his degree. I guess he needs to understand the dynamics when his cleat steps on somebody.
Yeah, exactly. Does that hurt? How much does that pressure hurt?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a different person on the field than he is off of it, completely. Yeah. And his dad was an engineer, and his mom's always been book strong. And he's an amazing guy, and he's very strong, and he's huge, and he's mean, and he's, he knows he's done some things that were wrong. But he says it's like turning on a switch. He goes, they say you can't. He goes, but I do. And so he gets on the field, and that's your enemy. You know, you probably understand that more than anybody, Pete. He just becomes a different person.
Yeah, and actually I was going to do some of this ties in because you're describing being a spy. I mean, that's really what you are.
Oh.
You build a network.
Okay.
The information flows in. You talk to everybody.
I always wanted to be a spy.
You are one.
Okay.
I mean, you do it in a different setting, just as dangerous. There was all kinds of times when I've died, didn't know I died in the staff room.
Oh.
Because I had said something or I overstepped a bound, and I didn't know those rules that you're teaching your students. And, if you undermine somebody and they think it's an assault on their career, well, they're all talking about you, and I'm out the door.
Right.
And I'm dead, Gotcha. So...
I mean, there are times it's been dangerous when I've gone out. Like in North Philly, I was doing a story on Hank Gathers, who played basketball and died on the court down here. And I did spend a year doing his backstory when I was Sports Illustrated. Sure. And there were times I was scared to walk up to, somebody's house in North Philly, and there was, it was the stereotypical, fires in the trash cans and the whole thing. But I did it, and I...
But you also deal in a world of high influence, too. Where if you overstep a bound or someone takes offense to whether you intend it or not, doesn't really matter. If that person chooses to make your life hard for the next hunk of time, they can.
Like Kobe Bryant?
Sure. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, there's all kinds of opportunities for people who, if you tell them the truth, or if they don't like your truth, anything, it can be really problematic.
I always say and I'll say this with Kobe too, although we just reconciled. Very strange. But we didn't speak for 12 years because I had covered his rape trial.
Yeah.
And I did a story on that and the whole thing. But I always tell my students, because they're like, what if someone doesn't like you? What if they don't like your story? And I said, as long as you are fair, honest, professional, and accurate, who cares? I don't care if someone likes me. I'm not trying to make more friends. I make enough friends, But as long as you are those things, then it doesn't really matter who likes you and what they think of your story.
Yeah, I had in a situation where we were going to do a wheat seed feed out to the Afghans, and by we really it was the government of Afghanistan. There's an Air Force colonel who's next step up is general. So he's a pretty big deal, and he runs the agricultural effort in the area. And he's like, this guy, this Afghan person, this leader is corrupt. He's stealing money, and he had no basis of knowledge. That he just took his own overblown misconceptions, and he wrote this email and sent it out to a bunch of people. Well, I'm the you on the ground, and I'm like, and I didn't at 100% maintain my professionalism. I didn't really know I'd broken a rule, but I broke a rule just the same. And I said, unlike Colonel so-and-so, I'm down here on the ground, and here's what I know. And it's just like 1, 2, 3, 4. This is a straight story, right? The unlike Colonel, I called him out. Granted, he'd sent the story out to everybody, and his completely false thing. What saved me from getting fired and going home was my boss was able to look at all of our boss and go, show me the part in Pete's story where he was wrong. Right. And they're like, son of a bitch. And so,
love that,
now peers had to go fight out that I was going to stay, but only because I was 100% honest and truthful. And I brought the ground truth.
Right.
Only reason why.
No, that's what you got to do. And you have to be confident in what you're doing.
Sure.
And you have to make double, triple, quadruple sure you're correct.
Yeah.
On stuff. And also, I'm the biggest suck up in the world, so I would never have called anybody out. I wouldn't have said, unlike Colonel, whatever. I would have said, here's what I know.
Right.
So, but I am.
A lesson I should have learned.
Well, it's why I've been in this business for almost 30 years, because I am a suck up. I have no problem telling you that. I will tell anybody anything.
So one of the things I wonder as someone who's trained in journalism and everything, when the president says fake news, why do we give it to him? Why do we I remember when they had the thing about the words you couldn't say at the CDC or whatever, and there was like a rumor. Like, okay, if that memo exists as a reporter, I can't release that unless I've seen. Like, I'll protect my source,
right?
But I need to know that memo actually exists. They never show, and maybe you don't know this example, but there are so many examples where if you did your job as a professional, as a journalism person, not as an opinion or an editorial piece, but as a journalist, then you wouldn't be fake. You would have actual sources.
Yeah, don't ask me about what this president does.
Yeah.
I don't want to even get in.
Yeah,
into politics.
And it's not an endorsement of him, but it's just the reporting has been so questionable, and just they run with a rumor, and it's like, why?
Well, that's what society is today. That's social media. That's what social media has done, and anybody can report anything.
Yeah.
And I was telling somebody yesterday, you have to earn respect, and you earn it by years in this business. And so I can call up ESPN right now and tell them something, and they'll go with it because I've earned that right to do that. But the problem is that somebody else can call up and completely have fake news, and somebody else goes with it. So you have to earn your respect, and you have to have respect for who that person works for and what they do.
So you bring up a good point. So what's the first step in your process if you have breaking news? Do you pick up the phone and call somebody, or do you tweet something out, or do you put something out on social media? Like, what's your process? Because that's how a lot of news is.
I know.
Especially in the NFL, you're going to see it on Twitter first, and then it gets picked up as reported by Adam Schefter, and then that story gets run on all the channels.
It's because Adam Schefter and Adrian Wojnarowski have that respect and have that cachet. I don't. I'd be scared to death to call up, and I would call a news editor first, and I say, look, I'm hearing that this has happened, and then they will vet it, and then it will, if it comes out, then it'll be Shelley Smith reporting. Okay. But those two guys are so good at what they do and are so solid on their information that they have like carte blanche to do what they want to do. Most of us have to go through a news editor and should go through a news editor just to protect ourselves, because who knows where the information came from,
Someone like Ken Rosenthal does similar things.
Yeah.
And there's just so much, there's a game behind the game where we're going to leak this, and because they're all negotiating.
Well, he works for baseball.
Sure.
And they're going to give it to him because they want him to break it. So.
But a lot of times he has something that isn't anything. It's like more rumor side, but you still have to report the rumor to kind of be in the game. And then is the rumor being used to affect, like the mystery team that's in on negotiations for Bryce Harper, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's case by case.
Okay.
You have to. Ken Rosenthal is a very good reporter.
He's excellent, for sure.
And you have to pretty much trust whatever he is, unless you think somebody's lying to him.
Right.
Which I'm sure happens. But I think it's case by case. And you try to vet everything you can. Yeah,
so when someone is using his platform to get a message out, they want to say something, it's not 100% true, is he then going to go back or whoever that person is in that case, someone of his ilk, are they going to go back to that leaker and say, I'm never going to come to you again? Okay.
Yeah, so I would.
Okay.
If somebody fed me wrong information,
right.
I would first make sure it was wrong, and then I wouldn't go with it, and I would let everybody else know it was wrong, and then I wouldn't trust that person again.
Right.
It's all a game of, you said it's a game. It's a game within the game.
Yeah.
And nobody really cares who's first on stuff, except for other journalists. I don't care.
Yeah.
If somebody else, I hate getting beat, know, and I want to be first on everything, but I'd rather be beat than be wrong.
Yeah.
So, and I think there's too much emphasis put on who's first. And I was in getting radiation the first time I had cancer, which was 10 years ago. And I had to go in for radiation, and I was waiting for a phone call on Lamar Odom, whether he was going to re-sign with the Lakers. And I made them wait to push me into radiation because I was like, no, I can't get my phone call inside the tube there or whatever it was. And the call came, and I was able to, and I missed breaking the story by like a minute and a half. It was just stupid.
Yeah.
Then I went and got radiation. But how stupid is that? So I wouldn't do that again.
Have you found yourself in a situation where you feel like someone's trying to use you with fake information? So you mentioned that you wouldn't trust that person if you found out it was fake, but have you been in a scenario where you feel like somebody's specifically telling you false information because they're hoping that you will to use you and your voice?
I don't think so. I'd like to think not, because I'm pretty well respected in this business, and I don't think people would do that to me. But they might, I don't know.
Well, because a lot of teams, a lot of times, teams leading up to the draft will tell you that they're going to do something that they're not going to do and they're never planning on doing, just to get that out there, just to to basically position themselves better.
I guess
for a trade or something like that.
I'm on a different level with Keyshawn Johnson. I wrote his book, and he babysat my daughter, and
so crazy.
I was with him during the draft, and his agent kept calling me saying, look, we don't know what's going on with the Jets. We need to report. And I said, well, is it true?
Yeah.
Is it not true? So I had to be careful on that one.
Because you're so close to Keyshawn and you want to help. Right.
Yeah, it would help. But I wouldn't do it. And I said, I can't compromise my integrity to help you. So we didn't do it. Yeah. So I don't think anyone's tried to feed me misinformation. They may have, but I haven't found out if they have.
How important are the laurels now? I mean, you've got tons of recognition, awards, all that kind of thing. Is that, I mean, sure, maybe there's a little bit of ego that motivates you. Is that important to you? Do you think this is going to be a Pulitzer or an Emmy, that kind of thing at all? Or?
Not as much as you might think. I mean, you can see my Emmys up there, and the only one that really meant something to me was the Jake Olsen one that I won last spring, because it was for an individual story. The rest were for shows, and people in Bristol have 10, 15, 20 statues, and it's not a big. This one meant something, and people in Bristol are also motivated by awards. I'm not. I'm like, whatever, you know.
Yeah.
If it's a good story, it's a good story, whether it wins or it doesn't. I thought it was ironic to be nominated for 2 in the same. I don't get nominated ever, and then suddenly I'm nominated for 2 in the same category. And I mentioned the other one, the Schuye LaRue story, too, because I thought that one should have won, honestly. But no, I'm not. I'm really not. And I guess that happened when I got cancer for the 3rd time.
Jesus. Yeah.
I know that I just didn't care about awards, and of course now I have more than ever because I did get cancer. So now I'm getting all the comeback player of the year awards. But it's just it's the work that drives me, and a good story is a good story, and I just love working on a good story, and that's all I really care about is just give me the work, and let me do my thing. And if it wins, it wins. If it doesn't. But there are people in Connecticut, in Bristol, in our home office that are very much into Emmys and awards, and they should be. I mean, that's what we do. But I'm just not personally. Doesn't drive me.
When you were on Mark Pattison's show, and this is kind of almost like a part 2 to that one, but you talked about when you were doing the Magic Johnson AIDS story that, you know, Magic Johnson wasn't comfortable talking at that time.
Right.
And so you said you go to everybody else and you get everything that you can about that, and you don't need that person. You try it again if you can, but if not, you move around. That's just a brilliant thing. I mean, especially like I'm working on this series of stories called The Prison Chronicles. But a guy from our high school, he graduated the year before, he came back my senior year, and he murdered his girlfriend on the campus and went to jail for 20 plus years. And so I wanted to have him on, but there's just too much pain there. There's too many problems in the community. Like, I'd have to be accountable. He has bad feelings towards me, and I don't need him. That's what I've learned from you.
Right.
What else can you teach me about all of this story gathering things where it's something as brilliant as that? Like, you don't need that person.
You really don't. And I argue all the time. They're like, well, if we don't get them, we don't have a story. I said, that's not true.
Yeah.
You go to everybody else. You go to every friend. You go to every acquaintance. You go to every teacher. You go to everybody surrounding the person, which is what I did with Magic. And we ended up winning for that show.
Yeah.
And because a lot of times the person that you're profiling is not that interesting. It's what everybody else says about it, him or her, that people pay attention to.
Yeah.
And, you know, and especially if it's somebody like, who did I just see the other day? Didn't like talking. Oh, the quarterback at Oklahoma. He said he didn't like talking about himself. And then they ask him, you know, what does this mean to you? Well, I don't really like talking about my, well, then why do you talk to him? Don't talk to him.
Yeah.
Go talk to everybody else. You know, what is he like? What was he like growing up? What was he like as a, you know, soccer player or as a baseball player? You know, and that's where you get your story. It's not because he's not going to tell you anything. And
Right.
of course, of course we go after him and we say, tell us your life story, and he's not going to. But some people, you know, are good. But you don't have to always have the first person that you go after. It doesn't have to be.
Yeah, Barry Sanders strikes me as a guy that you wouldn't want to tell his story from his point of view.
Yeah, he's kind of quiet.
Right.
He's quiet, and that's why these 30 for 30s that we do and around the, because we go around the issues a lot, and we talk with a lot of different people.
When it comes to the issues, one of the things we're trying to figure out is like transgendered people competing, you know, XY chromosome versus XX chromosome in a boxing ring and a weightlifting and wrestling. And then there's also just in general, like we're getting to the point where steroids are almost, it's almost like, yeah, that's performance enhancing, but gene therapy is happening, you know, stem cell research. We talked with Phil about that. Where do you think we're going? Or do you deal more in the present and not worry about that?
Well, I haven't really thought about it much, except for I did do a lot of work during the steroid era, and I think it's important that everyone's on a level playing field. But I don't know that we can ever guarantee that, because the doctors are still always ahead of the athletes.
Sure.
The chemists are ahead of the athletes, or the testers, I mean.
Sure.
And therefore the athletes are getting better and better treatment. You know, we looked at, you know, guys going over to Europe and getting blood transfusions and things like that. And so you just don't know.
Yeah.
And so you have to, I guess you have to trust people, but I don't know that we can. Because you just don't know what they're doing to try to get an edge. There's too much money to be made out there by winning. And you just don't know.
One of the things in the steroid era that always bothered me too was there was the binary assumption that steroids made you all the way better, but foul ground disappeared in baseball. You know, there's all these different things. Like we don't have a sense for. Yeah, you're stronger. Yes, you recover better, but what does that mean in terms of performance? You know, it
doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't help your hand speed. It doesn't help your hand-eye coordination. It does help you recover better, faster, quicker.
Right.
And is that a bad thing? No, I don't think so.
Right.
I just say I guess I say just let everybody do what they want to do and see what happens. Let the best, the best chemists win. But it's tough.
It is tough. It is also the thing, like Michael Phelps is an incredible swimmer, but at some point he has a genetic advantage. Lance Armstrong has a genetic, I mean, they're all doping and he's still the best. There's some mechanism that works well for him. Maybe he's transferring lactic acid better, whatever it's going to be. Well, I don't want that to be the reason why they win. Maybe they've got to do some other element, on the bike, like deliver, 15 chickens, that he's just, or a whole bunch of baguettes or something,
right,
to increase the level of difficulty. So it's not just your freakish VO2 max. It's some other element.
I don't know what drives people to win.
Yeah.
That's a really good question. What drives people to win? Many different things, money, fame, notoriety, a place in the history books. But why would you do it at any expense, especially if you don't know what effect that's going to have on your body? So I don't know. I don't know that we'll ever have clean sports.
Yeah.
I don't think we do.
I have one more question, and then I'm going to let Phil do whatever questions he wants.
I'll sit here all day. We have more sandwiches.
I'm going to have another sandwich.
Okay.
I'm interested in where your heart and your brain are in terms of the stories that resonate with you. There's a lot of tragedy in the stories that you're known for. Mm-hmm. I mean, that seems to be drawn to you. But I'm not going to presume that you're not a funny person as well, though. But
I'm very funny.
So have you found that, just you have a nose for a certain brand of story?
Well, I know what ESPN likes.
Okay.
And they like drama. And I did say this to a friend of mine who was born without legs, Dave Stevens, who's working for the Disability Channel. If you have a chance, check him out. He's doing great things. But I said, how ESPN, they like the stories of people with no limbs. And he goes, oh, yeah, we love those limbless people stories. And I just went, oh, sorry, Dave.
That's right.
I forgot. You don't have any legs. But, everyone likes a happy ending.
Sure.
Everybody likes a tearjerker. I'm working on one now that I can't really talk about because somebody will steal it, and I'm very competitive. I'll tell you off camera, off air, or off mic, or whatever. But there's a certain story that Tom Rinaldi does, and you just hear his voice and you start to cry.
Yeah.
And
he's got that music too.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
And we just did a story. It was beautifully done on a football coach who was born without legs or arms. It's just. Some things just seem like a natural story. That's why I thought the Schuye LaRue story, her being homeless, was so different and was magical to work on.
Yeah.
And it was sad because it ended sad, and it's still sad. But there's just a certain story that appeals to ESPN about sickness and anybody overcoming something is huge. So we'll do yours when you overcome ALS.
There's a good chance.
I know. And I'm excited about it.
Yeah. What's your last question, Phil?
I don't even know if I have any more questions. I just think you're amazing in what you're doing. And
I think you're amazing. The way you've attacked this disease is pretty inspiring.
Well, so what I've found out, though, is if you talk to more people with ALS, and the problem is there aren't a lot of people that you can go talk to. Mm-hmm. And if there are, they're not around for very long.
Right.
But everybody, like to a person that I've talked to that has been diagnosed with ALS are doing exactly what I'm doing. And it's really because you don't have another option.
Right.
Like you can't, there's no hole that you're just going to climb in and just give up. You're going to sit there and you're going to fight. So either ALS picks the fighters or it makes you a fighter if you weren't one before. But everybody that I've run into, that I've spoken with, and I've spoken with a lot. To a person, they have this something in them that it's almost like ALS knew that they would be able to handle it, and so ALS chose them. And
tell me something about Steve Gleason that I don't know.
He's the lunch lady at his son's school.
He is?
Get out of here.
Yeah, at Stewart Hall.
So he hands the lunches out?
Well, he calls himself Lunch Lady Steve, but
oh my
I'm not sure. I don't think he's handing out too many lunches.
Right, because he's pretty incapacitated now, right?
Yeah. So as far as him handing anything, it's not. But
he shows
he's
up.
Present. He's present.
That's awesome.
So I don't know if a lot of people know that.
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty amazing. There is a certain spirit that I can feel from you and people who do this in this business and are passionate enough to drive up here and come to my house for lunch. You know, it's a reason why we are good at what we do. Because we go blue
on the payoff.
Yeah,
it's great.
No, there is, because we're willing to work harder than anyone else.
Yeah,
it's very true.
I'll be damned if someone's willing to talk to me and all I got to do is drive 5 hours to get to them. Done. You know, it just has to be that way. That's where the story is.
Yeah, it is. You're right. And it is much better in person than on a phone.
And I'll tell you one thing I figured out that no one else in combat ever does or knew, and this is my own thing, is we always go to their house and they feed us because we show up, and we're like a biker gang. We got guns and we're rough, you know. And so, of course, they feed us. When I can get them onto my camp as a VIP and I can feed them, game over. You know, it's just anything I want. From the commander who sees me doing it and from the guy who's there as my guest, it's a totally different world.
Yeah.
And you can't do that from behind a desk.
No, you can't. That's why I say get out and do things. Tell my students, do not hide behind emails. Do not... I emailed him and he didn't email me back, and I said, "Well, then go knock on his door." You know, you just gotta be willing to do what someone else won't.
I want to throw one more at you.
Okay,
you said it was okay.
Yeah.
Another thing I do is I'll get that person I'm talking to, and I need to build trust. They don't have a lot of trust to give because it's dangerous where they're at, and so if I'm struggling, I get them up out of their chair and I have them walk me along wherever they're in charge or whatever. And I talk about what it used to be like, what it should be like, what it could be like. And I get them into this imaginary world. It's a real world. We're in it, but I can't see it until they show it to me. And that always changes how they relate to me after that.
That's interesting.
I can see their new world or their old world where they're trying to get back to. Yeah, it's incredible.
That is interesting. That's a good device. I'm going to have to steal that from you.
Please do.
Okay.
Yeah. I found it by accident. I'm sure someone else has discovered that first.
No, I think it's really good. Really good.
Thank you so much for coming on.
It's my pleasure.
This is fantastic. Thank you.